All righty. I think we are good to go. Good morning or good noonday to everyone. I am Fakisha Gunn, and I'm the Associate Dean for Students at Memphis Theological Seminary. And today, I have the pleasure of talking with Dr. Stephanie Patton about our wonderful spiritual direction program. And so I want to open up with allowing for her to be able to share about herself. And so, Dr. Patton, do you mind sharing with us about your background and how you came to be a spiritual director?
I'd be happy to, Fakisha. I am a Presbyterian pastor and have been for 30 some years and serve a little church in Oakland. And about 20 years ago, I was able to return to school to get a certificate and doctor of
And a little
ministry.
church in Oakland.
And about 20 years ago, I was able to go back to school and get my DMin and my certificate in spiritual direction from San Francisco Theological Seminary, and which is a Presbyterian school.
Mhm.
And I have loved being a spiritual director. It was a transforming experience to go through the classes. I went for 3 Januaries and a summer, and then wrote papers and did my thesis in the time in between. And I have had a spiritual direction practice for almost 20 years. Several years ago, I was working with Martha Lyle Ford in the Center for Faith and Imagination. And one of the things that we have done is connect people with spiritual directors in the community, people that are in seminary, people that are already in the church, people that are laity, all kinds of folks called us with interest in finding a spiritual director. And what I began to see was that we didn't have enough spiritual directors as people of color, and
Mm.
began to feel like we needed to remedy that. And that sort of began the idea of possibly offering the certificate for spiritual direction at Memphis Theological Seminary.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I believe one of the first questions that people come with in regards to spiritual direction is what is the difference, or how does spiritual direction differ from counseling?
That's an important question. And actually, it's one of the questions we ask people when they apply what they think the difference is. I have found in my life that counseling is something that you need periodically, and we all need it, particularly when we're going through very stressful, difficult times. I would say the main difference is that spiritual direction is an ongoing process of growing with another person, leading you in growing in the presence of God and your awareness of that presence. So it doesn't just happen during crises, but it happens in everyday situations as well as the more difficult times of life. So I see spiritual direction as a process in which someone who is learned and skilled and trained walks with another person who is interested in discovering more about their spiritual life and identifying where God is in the day to day experiences that they have.
Awesome. How long has spiritual direction been around?
Well, it's really been around for since the beginning of Christianity, if not
Mhm.
before, in the Jewish tradition. But it's had a resurgence in the last 25 to 30 years, so it's become a lot more popular.
Mhm.
But but in the time of the Desert Fathers and Mothers, it became very much a sought after discipline for people. They would go out into the desert and seek wisdom from someone who had removed themselves from society and lived in the desert. This was right after and early on after the Roman Empire had taken over, or Christianity had become part of the Roman Empire. And that really changed Christianity and the focus of what people thought its importance was. And so there were those who resisted that, that went into the desert, and people, everyday people, would follow them out there for wisdom and consult. And that's really where it began.
Mm. Now, would you say that spiritual direction is more of a one-on-one or happens in groups or both?
It's definitely both. It's probably more common one on one.
Hmm.
I actually did my dissertation working with spiritual direction with divorced single mothers. And
Oh.
we had a group, and that was really powerful.
Mhm.
And you can do a group where the leader does individual spiritual direction with each person in the group with all gathered, or you can have the group members participate in spiritual direction with each individual as well as the leader. So there's a variety of ways to do it. It's very powerful to have a group setting. But it's not as common, and not everybody's as comfortable leading a group to do that as others are.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think whenever I have shared or talked with people about spiritual direction, it definitely piques their interest. As far as can you kind of model for us what it would look like if a person were to come to you for one-on-one spiritual direction? Once they come into the door and they take a seat, kind of how does that interaction happen?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I think it depends on how well I know the person. If it's a new person to me,
Mm-hmm.
we have an hour together where we just get to know each other, and I learn about that person and their um, background, their spirituality, their family, all the things that are important to them, and then they learn about my background and what I'm capable of doing with them. And we have a covenant together, which agrees that if they are ready to do it and willing, that we will commit to 6 times together to meet once a month for about an hour and work on identifying the presence of God in that person's life. And
Mm.
so it usually, once we've had the get to know each other session, then when they come in, we'll begin with quiet, sometimes with prayer, sometimes just with silence. I'll let the person speak about whatever is on their heart, and I listen. I do a lot of listening, and when there needs to be a comment, I will try to make that. And when I'm clear about God being there in that moment, I will identify that with the person I'm seeing. We always have an empty chair set up in the room so that we know God is present as well
Mm.
as the two of us, because it's really God who does the directing, and I'm just sort of the conduit for that.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. For those who are interested in being the spiritual director, what kind of key skills and gifts are needed? I know you made mention about listening being a primary skill and gift, but can you speak a bit more to that?
Sure. Well,
Mhm.
listening is certainly a primary gift, and listening can grow and be developed. It doesn't have to be something that you automatically know how to do. Although that certainly helps if you do have experience with listening. I think another thing is compassion and
Mm.
and really love for people and acceptance of people wherever they are in their life of faith. And sometimes people will come for
Mhm.
spiritual direction feeling like they don't have any faith. And so
Mm.
it's really important that we're never judgmental, that we're always accepting of where a person is and see that as part of their life of faith, no matter how different it might be from what our experience has been.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Um, for people who may be a bit hesitant about exploring the spiritual direction program, can you talk about or what advice you would give a person who may be considering joining but kind of hesitant about the program?
Sure. I think whenever we undertake something new, there is some hesitancy, and that's probably a good thing.
Mhm,
Um, I I think if you're a person who really wants to be involved deeply in the individual lives of other people, not just as a pastor, but as a close shepherd, director, midwife, teacher, one on one person,
mhm.
then I think you really should look at spiritual direction as a possibility for you. And you can combine that with an MDiv or an MA, or you can do it just as a certificate. Um, I guess that's all I really have to say about that. Can you think of anything else I should cover?
Oh, actually, can you share about the program itself? How long the program is, the classes, things like that?
Certainly. We think the program lasts approximately 2 years. It depends on when classes are offered. We have several courses that are required. The Introduction to the Art and Practice of Spiritual Direction, which ideally is the first class you take, although it isn't always.
Mhm,
Um, the Enneagram and its use in spiritual direction, that's usually a two-part tour that is done in a retreat setting, and at least it has been. It may become a class. We're investigating that. The History of Christian Spirituality, that's the class that we have ongoing right now with Dr. Pete Gattke teaching, and it's an amazing review of where spirituality has been in the Bible and how it's grown and become what it is today through the centuries. We also offer a class that's required on the practice of discernment, which
mhm.
is a large part of what we do together with people is help them discern when they're making decisions, not just yes or no, but really get to the bottom of what God is calling them to do in that particular situation. In addition to that, we have three possible electives: the ethical framework for spiritual direction, the spiritual direction and cultural competence, and spiritual direction and social justice. And one of those three classes will be offered in a period of time so that each person that's seeking the certificate will be able to choose one of those to take. And then we have the integrative seminar, which puts together all that you've learned and kind of um, summarizes what you've learned and gives you a direction that you're going to pursue as you become a spiritual director. The other thing we
Mhm.
do is we have a cohort, and this is made up of all the people that are in the spiritual direction program, wherever they are along the way. And we meet every other week, and we practice skills, we share verbatims, we learn new skills, we help give each other feedback and suggestions and support. It's a wonderful way to be a part of this program that goes on during the school year um, every other week.
Super. Can you share about verbatims? You made mention of that, and so the viewers may not be. Um,
Sure. A
uh-huh.
referendum has to do with a session, not a whole session probably, but a part of a session where you recall in writing what the person has said and how you've responded, and you look at how you felt and what you've done. And the real focus is not on what the directee needs, but on what you as the director needs to help you be a better spiritual director.
Oh,
So
that's so good.
it's really very important part of what we do.
Wow. So, but roughly about how long do you think it would take for someone to get through the spiritual direction program?
Well, I think about 2 years.
About 2 years. And, can you kinda walk us through some of the, highlights of what they'll experience? I know that 2nd semester, I always, am, interested to hear about, how you all teach them to be able to start doing spiritual direction and some of the other things that you all help for them to be able to, start their own program. Can you speak to that?
Right. Well, as time goes on, and particularly in the cohort, we help
Mhm.
them connect with directees. So they begin to experience what it's like to be a spiritual director. One or two, no more than that in the beginning. We call them directees, not clients. And then as they mature in their skills and as they get through the program and the classes that we offer, they become more and more ready for their own practice. And we are there. We haven't graduated anyone yet. We've just started the program a little over a year ago. So we look forward to helping them move into a practice if that is what they choose. Some people just like to have the skills, and lots of pastors seem to appreciate that for their pastoral concerns. But those that want to do a particular practice of spiritual direction will give advice and direction for that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. There's during the process of the application for entering into the spiritual direction program, there's a part where the applicant has to interview
Right.
with you. And so can you talk about that interview process and why it's in place, and then also kind of some of the things that they can expect during that time?
Right. I think it's a real important part of the process because it is a time where the interviewer, which is usually me, can understand the desire of the person and the motivation of the person to become a spiritual director, and to see what gifts they have for it, what practices, spiritual practices they already have in place, and really learn how they approach their faith in sharing it with others. And what we look for in that interview is how open the person is to what another person is going to bring to them. If they're a judgmental person, it'll be much harder for them to be a spiritual director. Um, we look for compassion and kindness. We look for openness to very different kinds of faith from your own, even if you are very solid in your own faith. Um, we look for a sense of justice and a sense of living in God's presence all the time, or as much as that person can. We always ask about their spiritual disciplines. What practices do they have that keep them grounded and in touch with God and God's presence in their daily life?
Mhm. I love how this keeps coming up and that you all are helping to form and shape the spiritual director themselves, that
Mhm.
it's a space of reflection and where are they, as well as their directee. And so for someone who may be interested in spiritual direction and they may feel like their spiritual disciplines may not be at the place where they think it needs to be, what are some tips or advice that you can give in order to kind of hone in on accessing and developing spiritual disciplines that they're currently doing, and also to access those that they're not?
Right. Well, the intro class does a lot with teaching various kinds of spiritual disciplines and
Mhm.
practicing them.
Mhm.
So it's a very important aspect of what we do is to keep our own spiritual life strong. So we learn variety of ways that people can try. Examine is one thing. We look at Lectio Divina. We look at meditation. We look at traditional prayer. All kinds of options. And if a person's interested but they're not feeling really strong in their own spiritual disciplines, I really wouldn't worry about that.
Mhm.
What I would worry about is if they're open
Mm.
to finding what is going to work for them.
Mhm. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I know that we haven't graduated anyone from the program, but is there any engagement after they've graduated? Do they still have access to um, the cohort, or to still be able to develop any skills?
Wow, that's a great question. And the truth of the matter is, most spiritual directors and all good spiritual directors, faithful spiritual directors, are in supervision of some kind. And there is a peer supervision group here in Memphis where we meet together every month, and someone will present a particular issue, and the whole group will kind of supervise on that.
Mhm.
And so that's an option for people after they finish. We might consider continuing the cohort. I haven't gotten that far yet, but that's an option.
That's awesome. Well, do you have anything that you think that would be beneficial to share that I haven't asked?
Let me think a second. I think you've been very inclusive in what you've asked me. Um, I guess what I want to say is it is a very enriching program. It's something that even if you're not going to practice spiritual direction in a one-on-one setting, the
Mhm.
skills are wonderful for pastors and for your listening skills grow. And it's just a great thing to add to an MDiv or an MA. Um, so I encourage people to consider it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to go over the application process. I'm going
Sure.
to share my screen and share with everybody the website, Memphis Theological website. Our URL is memphisseminary.edu, and you can go to become a student, and you'll click on degree programs, and then you'll be able to scroll all the way down, and you'll be able to see our certificate in spiritual direction. And so we'll click on that particular button, and you'll see all things concerning spiritual direction. And so I want to also highlight the fact that Dr. Patton shared that the MACM and MDiv both have a specialization in spiritual direction. And there are those who only want the certificate, and we do have a standalone certificate that you can also receive. So whether you're in a degree program, or you desire just to get the certificate, you can still get the classes and still be able to get all the things that are included in the spiritual direction program. And so if you're interested and you're ready to apply, you can click this button right here. And once you apply, it'll take you to our application portal. You'll put in either create an account or put in your already created account email address, and then you'll be able to go in, you'll fill out an application and an essay that will cover a few questions. I'll open up the brochure so you can see that. And then once you get the application in and the personal essay, we'll send it to Dr. Patton. Dr. Patton will contact you in order to interview you for the program. Once she has given us the green light, then we will contact you with all the information in order for you to begin your journey in spiritual direction. If we want to take a look at the amount of courses you'll take, they are 6 courses. That's 18 credit hours. We also show on here the different courses that you'll take. The first 5 courses are the standard courses, and then you have the ability to choose one of the additional electives. When you take a look at the tuition for to audit the course or to get the certificate, it's $430 per course. However, if you're in the Master of Divinity program, then of course you would get it for credit, and it would have the same costs as if you were taking a regular for credit class. And so we're hoping that if you desire to participate in our spiritual direction program and you still have questions, that you will contact admissions. You can email us at admissions@memphisseminary.edu, or you can give us a call at 334-5891. We would love to talk with you and answer any questions that you may have. And also, if you need a deeper dive into some questions regarding spiritual direction, I'm sure that Dr. Patton would love to take your call and just share with you about our journey. I have invited Dr. Patton out to different groups within the community, and not only were they impressed, they were like, I definitely need to be a part of spiritual direction because of all of the skills that are all the skills that come along with spiritual direction, as well as the great need for spiritual direction out there in the kingdom. And so I admonish you all that if you have any questions, please contact us. You can also review this webinar that we have, this Facebook Live, and then just get in contact with us. We'll be so happy to connect with you and talk more about it. So thank you, Dr. Patton, for your time today. And see you all later. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.